Welcome back. I'm Kim Bailey. She's Fulyana Osborne. This is Inside Exec. Today we're going to look at a case study and it's about customer feedback. Now this is a topic that we have talked about and we've had guests talk about numerous times over the history of this podcast, but it is becoming, I think, increasingly important. Not just that you get the feedback for your organisation, but what you do with it afterwards. And also, if we take it a step before that, how you gather it and the timing of how you gather it. Now, this is based on a number of experiences that I've had and in talking about it beforehand, a number of experiences that Fulyana has had. And we'll talk about our experience as consumers, as customers, and also, for me, what I would have preferred the organisations to be doing in terms of their management of that customer feedback. So the first one relates more to travel and looking at review-based customer feedback. So whether it's where you're staying or places that you're eating, so Google has a system where it will send you a request to fill out a review for an eatery, perhaps, that is listed through Google Maps, and that becomes their listing in terms of Google search results. So it's important for the business. So if I look at, first of all, on the business side of things, it is vital these days, more than ever, for you to maintain that listing on Google and to adjust your opening hours, to adjust the food that you have, to adjust the photos that are there. But think of it as that is your shop window, basically. That's where people are going to increasingly look to see what experience others had, or what they ate, or what might be suitable for their dietary needs, whatever else it is. And that becomes your silent advertising, so long as you keep it maintained well. And the fastest way for you to get bad reviews is to not maintain it, because people rely on that information, so they look at the opening hours, they turn up and it's closed, then you're going to get a bad review. And the algorithm that works out the star system is going to not work in your favour if you're not getting very many reviews and the ones you're getting are not good and they're based on things that you could have fixed. It's not about the actual experience, it's about the perceived experience that they've had. So how you do anything is how you do everything. So people will judge you on the fact that you didn't update it, so you must be a bit lazy about the cooking or the seating arrangements or whatever else it is, and so you get a bad reputation through no fault of your own other than you didn't keep yourselves up to date on that platform that people are using to determine whether they will visit your business or not, whether it's food or otherwise, because all businesses can have a listing there. Similarly, if you're staying somewhere, if you're having the personal interaction with people who are staying, then you have the opportunity to ask them for feedback, even though, the automatic system will happen if you're using a booking system of some kind. The timing of asking for that feedback, particularly now that people are travelling increasingly, and so businesses are getting back to some sense of what it was like 2 or 3 years ago. We won't say before the C word. The timing of asking for that feedback and the way you ask, it probably relates back to so much of the training that we were given in the early customer service days about asking for feedback when people are at their happiest with the service. So when they've actually got the service or when they're still enjoying the service is when they're on their high of how good they think you are. And so that's when you ask for it. Yes and no, because what you want is a reliable and measured and useful review. And if there are things that they weren't happy with, you really need to know those things. Because if you don't, and you don't address them, then increasingly people are going to stack the negatives and say, well, I read this, and this was the decision. This is what I based my decision on in staying here. And this was our experience, and then there were these other things, and so they'll find absolutely everything they can to justify why their experience was so different to the reviews that they're reading. So be very careful about when you ask for your feedback. I'm not going to give you a solution to it. I'm just saying that that's one of the things in terms of this case study that you need to look at. It's making sure that if it's a review-based feedback system, that you have the pieces in place for that jigsaw to work well for you and that you don't have 1 or 2 pieces missing. I'll let you talk.
I'm going to talk from the perspective of the receiver. So I'm the customer. I do like the fact that they ask my feedback. I'm happy to give it whether they ask or not, depending on my experience, good and bad. But if they're asking, I like to see it at the end of the process. So that, for example, if you stayed in a place or you travelled on airlines or whatever, or you purchased an item, if they ask at the right time, that would suit me better, which is at the end. So then I can comment on first interaction, how I found them or didn't find them, and then how that first process go, then right throughout the communication, right up to delivery or complete of the service, where I stayed, had a good time, had the meal, whatever it is, at the end. So I prefer it that way rather than halfway through or at the beginning, where they just and then keep asking you. Some of them do ask you throughout, and I find that annoying because I can still answer their questions in sections. That's fair enough, and that's a good thing. So how was your experience with booking? How was your experience with payment, etc.? I can do that, but ask me all at once and at the end. So this way I can give that. The other thing is, I like to know that they actually got it, and it's not, I know that everything is automated, and that's fine, but I like to know that they read it and they're doing something with it. So, for example, lots of times, thankfully, I had good experiences. So you say, I'm really happy with this and the other, and the staff member or members or whatever. A response that say, thank you for taking the time is good, but to actually say, it was nice to know that staff blah blah blah, and we'll bring it to job blogs as attention, or we'll celebrate them or whatever, then they're doing something with it, and that's worth your time and effort, and quite deservedly for the people who did the right thing. They should have that. Conversely, that should also happen when something didn't go quite right, and that's not just about whinging or anything. It's a respect. You ask for feedback, you could do something about it, and even if you choose not to do anything about it, just say to them, look, thank you for your feedback. However, we're not able to do this because, or we have thought about it and we're looking at alternatives. Yeah. Anything like that, just so they're doing something. So if I went there again, or I gave my view to a recommendation, I gave somebody a recommendation, say everything was fantastic except for this bit which they're doing something about, or I was really happy with everything, I want them to have that experience and not come back and say, well, no, that got even worse.
It's interesting too that when you talk about automation, so much of it is automated, and I think that organisations I will say my experience has been the bigger the organisation, the less they seem to know what to do with customer feedback. And that's my personal experience. I'm concerned that with automation, they think that's going to be the answer because they haven't got the way of providing human resources for those activities, that they get sold a package that looks like it will do all of the things that they think should happen, but that the information that's coming out of those automated systems, they're great systems, and they provide you with lots of information, but if you're not using that information, then there's no point in having it because it's not going anywhere, it's not doing anything, it's not getting acknowledged, all of those sorts of things. Now, I have talked previously about one of the supermarket chains that I had occasion to send feedback many years ago now, and got very, very delayed response, like months later, for an item. Now, more recently, I needed to be in touch with them for another activity, and I couldn't find a way to be in touch with them online. And there was no phone number. I couldn't ring them either. They didn't want to know. That was my impression. They didn't want to know. And eventually I found a form on the website, and it didn't work. So they don't even know that the systems are not working because they're not using the information that is or isn't coming in from. They just blithely think, well, no one's complained this week, or no one's sent us feedback this week, that's all good, because they're getting nil reports, but no one's testing it to see if it's working or not. And the other one, again, is a repeat activity where I did send feedback to a retail chain who provided what I considered to be outstanding service during a time of very stressful interactions with customers right at the beginning of 2020. I wanted to compliment them on the way that a particularly young person had dealt with what could have been a very abusive situation. And I thought that she handled it very maturely and very well, and I thought she needed to be acknowledged for it. And so I wrote all of that in the written feedback, and I got nothing, no acknowledgement, no. So I don't know whether she ever knew or not. Now, again, in the last month, I've had to go back into that store for other reasons. And once again, there was the manager and a store assistant, and they, again, went out of their way to be as helpful as they possibly could. I wanted to acknowledge it in some other way than what I did in the store, but I thought, what's the point? Because they won't ever know, because my experience last time was that nothing happened.
Yeah.
And so I didn't write anything down, but I did do the verbal feedback to lots of other people and the recommendations to go there, and I would always go to that particular store knowing that obviously they're managed well and their focus is on customer service. And just as an aside, what happened was that I went in with my dad, who's almost 91 now, and he's in a wheelchair, and he was looking for a bum bag because, old school as he is, he carries his wallet in his back pocket and he's having difficulty getting it out when he's sitting in the wheelchair, because he still has to pay for everything. You know, he's of the generation where the man pays. And so I said, well, we'll just get a bum bag so you can have it on your waist.
Yeah.
And so we went into the store. We got in, so probably only about 5 feet into the store, and these two people were talking at one of the racks of the store, and they both turned and said, could they help? And I said what we were looking for, and the manager said to the young girl, you go down and get it. And she said, you stay here, we'll go and bring the choices to you. And I thought, well, that's real service in this day and age, that they didn't just say it's down this aisle and turn to the right, but no, you wait there and we'll bring them up to you.
Right.
And I acknowledged them, obviously, at the time, and I would like to have thought that I could send it somewhere, but I just wasn't confident that anything would happen about it, so I didn't do anything about it. So our warning there is, if you're in an organisation where you think that customer feedback is happening, find out what is actually happening, how often it comes in, and what are you doing with it. And on the other side of it, find out then if you're not getting it, or if you're not getting very much, or you don't really know what to do with it, go to the before unit and find out when you're collecting it, how you're collecting it, and where in your organisation is it the responsibility to do something about it, to review it, to look at it, to answer it, whatever else it is.
And as a recipient, I know it's frustrating with those examples. I also know we're all very busy in that, but please, if you can find the time, always give feedback, and this way, hopefully, the companies will do what we're saying here, don't let it go to waste, improve your process. But please, because remember, we are talking to other human beings who've given us their service, and they make them get up in the morning and say, my day was worthwhile. I didn't just have a routine day. Somebody noticed that I do a good job.
Yeah.
And I think that makes I know it would be good for me to get that feedback if I was in that situation. And, you know, every human will value that as well. Yeah.
And also important, I think, underlying all of that is that in another podcast we talk about the Forbes predictions for management issues in 2023, and one of the things that they've listed there is about increased customer expectation.
Yeah.
And so if you're not measuring the feedback and your customers have an increased expectation of the service that they should be receiving because of the way they've been looked after in the last few years in different environments, you're missing out, and you're going to suffer as an organisation because you're not addressing those increased expectations from your customers, because you don't know what they are, because you're not taking any notice of the feedback. So it's a vicious circle. Just better get in there and fix it. We'll leave it there. I'm Kim Bailey. She's Fulyana Osborne. This is Inside Exec.